Hey, good morning, Wyoming Military Department. Thanks for joining us here today at really what's our first virtual town hall. And so appreciate very much all of you being able to tune in today. This is our first crack at a virtual town hall, so I'm just hopeful right now that our crack creative crew here doesn't have a set of birdies flying around my head or some kitty ears or something like this. But I'll tell you, anything that covers my face or General Nezik's face is probably to the benefit of everyone. So we'll continue to drive on. Hey, first I just wanted to start off with just to tell you how proud I am of the Wyoming Military Department. You folks have done an outstanding job in this COVID crisis. It's been incredible. You know, I talk about sword and the shield a lot, and nothing has been more evident of the sword and shield than what we're going through here. When we think about lethality and our folks that are still overseas performing missions, we think about responsiveness, our folks here that are responding to the COVID crisis. And I think about partnerships and what we had to do with the interagency and WOES and Department of Health and all the partners that we've reached out and touched. This is what makes us the sword and shield, and you've done a great job. Frankly, I think you've done it almost seamlessly. You've gone from normal operations to really degraded operations in a very short period of time and done it almost seamlessly. It's like watching a duck on water. All the work that's going on underneath is what makes this thing move. But on the top side, it looks seamless. And the military department has done a great job. So I very much appreciate the time, effort, and energy each of you have put into to doing this. I've got, normally when I talk virtual town hall, I'll tell you what's going on in my green book here in the top issues, and that's my intent today. I'm going to talk a few things, but we've got a couple of special guests with us today. Normally, we get to hear from the State Command Chief Moore and State Sergeant Major Pafford, but we also have the two commanders with us today, General Nezvik and Colonel Lyman. And so many of the things that I normally discuss, I'm going to turn it over to those folks and let them be able to speak with you today. I will, let me just give you a quick agenda. I want to talk strength very quickly. I want to talk about the COVID response. Obviously, that's taken up a lot of our bandwidth right now. I want to talk about the interim topics that we have scheduled to talk to the legislature about. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Wyoming Cowboy Challenge, and then really just sum it up with our culture and leadership as we go forward. First off, let me talk about strength. You know, COVID has certainly taken precedence when we talk about what's going on in the military department right now, what's going on in the state, and what's going on in our nation and world. But strength continues to be the primary, our priority as we continue to move forward as a military department. And it continues to improve. Right now, the Army's sitting at 1576. Which is about 16 over the goal right now, but which is right where we need to be. I think we all understood, at least on the Army side, that we were going to peak and then come down to meet our goal at 1560 at the end. So great work by the recruiting force, great work by everybody that continues to drive the Army strength up. It's going well, and thanks for that effort. Air's also improved. They're at 1232, which is a +7 this year from where they've been. So again, recruiters working hard, airmen providing leads. The strength of the air continues to get better, and that's what it's going to take. It's going to take incremental, constant, steady improvement. And I will tell you, as far as the strength fight is going, the mission that we have in strength, we continue to achieve that mission, and we're basically on track to finish at the end of the year where we want to be. Let me talk COVID very quickly on what we've got there. As of this, the minute I'm talking to you right now, we have 282 cases in Wyoming, and still currently with just the one death. Wyoming was the last state to have a fatality due to COVID, and it really does appear that the state was successful in flattening that curve of infection and suppressing the spread of the virus. It's been going, as we continue to flatten that down, it continues to push our peak, what we consider where we might have the most deaths to the right. Started out about the 29th of April, then went to the 2nd of May. Now we're about to the 9th of May where we think we're going to peak in terms of death in Wyoming. And even then, that continues to drop. The last estimates last week had by the end of August that we could have as much as 67 deaths in Wyoming. Just this week, that's already dropped down to 45. So as more data comes in and we continue to suppress the spread of that virus, the impact on our people is continuing to drop, and that's what our purpose is here, is to save lives. So it looks like that's going on. In the military department, we still only have one member that's been diagnosed effectively with COVID. That person is actually asymptomatic now. They've passed the symptoms and they're doing very well. So things look very well at the military department in terms of keeping our force protected and safe in order to perform its missions. That credit goes all out to each and every one of you that continue to be diligent and disciplined in suppressing the spread and staying home and keeping that virus from going through our ranks. So nice job to all the leaders, all the soldiers, all the airmen, all the employees. The Wyoming Military Department is in good shape to respond. You know, I think now, as we're going forward, we can start having that discussion of what it looks like next. How do we start bringing folks back in from quarantine, from isolation, from working at home, teleworking? How do we get those back in? What does that look like? If I were to sort of anticipate, you know, I think we'll get some sort of reprieve this summer where we can sort of reconstitute and get right again. But I think there's a high likelihood that COVID could be back here in the fall and the wintertime in some shape or form. So we got to start thinking about how we do that, how we prepare for that. So that's where our minds are starting to turn into now in our plans is what that looks like and on what conditions do we bring those folks back. That is going to be largely tied to the governor and his health protection orders, and as he sees those come back and easing the restrictions on the state, ours will be tied with that. So we'll keep you posted as that goes forward, and as plans continue to develop. Let me quickly turn to interim topics and what we're looking at for the legislature this year. The management council that decides which units or what topics are going to be, what bills are going to be created, what topics are going to be discussed, they're actually not going to meet till tomorrow. So we won't have approval of these topics until tomorrow at the earliest, and it may be in a few days later. But I can tell you what we've asked for. We're going to try to rewrite Title 19 a little bit. We found that our military code, as it is currently written, isn't really responsive to a lot of the needs that we have right now. So we're going to rewrite the military code is one of the interim topics that we're going to study over the next few months. Secondly, in order to sort of increase our retention rates and our ability to attract good soldiers and airmen, we're going to look at what benefits can the state provide that could help in retention. And you'll probably see a survey coming out here pretty soon that is going to ask that very question. What would keep you? What kind of benefit that the Guard and the state of Wyoming could offer that would really influence you to stay and keep serving as we go forward? So that's one of the things we'll study. The third thing that we're going to look at is looking at the feasibility of Wyoming Cowboy Challenge to move it to a place that's maybe a little more high populous that can really get at solving our turnover rate on the full-time side there. Now, that's going to be a big lift. I don't know if it's doable or not, but in discussion with the legislature, we're going to take a look and see if it's feasible for that to happen and see if we can't help on that attrition rate that continues to cause turbulence in the full-time side of Cowboy Challenge. So those are the three things that we're going to ask for. I'll tell you right now that there's already some discussion with the CARES Act coming down about how the state of Wyoming will respond to funding and programs that come with the CARES Act. A lot of these of our committees are looking at that now, and I suspect that once the management council's done meeting tomorrow, there'll be some guidance coming to each of the committees about how do we best prepare for this as we go forward, and what kind of legislation would be required to help us in future endeavors like this. So I think that's what's going to go on. Wyoming Cowboy Challenge Academy, we did suspend the program for a period of time. I think here pretty quick in the next 2 weeks, if we're not able to bring students back, we're going to have to push them into the next class. That next class right now is scheduled to start in July, and the team's done a great job of keeping in contact with the cadets that are home now, trying to make sure that they're continue on with their schoolwork. And when we do bring them back in July, they'll have sort of a head start on where things are going. This current class that's going on that we suspended 41 will probably not have to go the entire time when they come back in. There'll be some period that they'll attend, and then they'll have the opportunity to either stay and participate in Cowboy Challenge or graduate and move on with their lives. So great work by the Cowboy Challenge folks. That's not an easy one. They're doing a great job reaching out to our cadets and making sure that they're doing fine in this time when they're at home. Lastly, I just wanted to talk really about culture and leadership. You know, as a senior leadership team up here, that's always our focus. And nothing talks about the real culture and leadership of an organization except when there's in times of crisis. And that's certainly what's going on here. And I can tell you that our culture is strong and our leaders are strong. And that's really that's really indicative of the kind of folks that we have in our Wyoming Military Department. It's amazing to sit and watch how all of you react every day, how all of you all are mission focused, how all of you all are working to make sure that our residents are kept safe, and we're protecting them. So that's a great thing. I think that's my quick run through of the things I wanted to talk to. I think we got a couple of questions that I can ask, and then I'll turn it over to General Nesvik, and then after that, Colonel Lyman.
Sir, as the Wyoming Adjutant General, do you intend to echo the guidance and fully support the memorandum released by the DoD in regard to stop movement? And the second part to this question, if the memorandum continues to limit travel past May 11th, should I postpone family vacations I had planned for mid-May?
Okay, thanks. So a lot of nuance there, but let me talk to you about the DoD piece of that. The DoD stop movement really applies to us when we're traveling in DoD business, Department of Defense business. So whenever we go on orders and that sort of thing, if I talk about, that's going to be totally controlled by the Secretary of Defense and the services on what they do on that. That's going to moderate when our units deploy. That's going to moderate when our units redeploy. And I think that our two service commanders are going to talk about that. What I think this question is getting at is really, can you leave the state? Can you take personal travel and that sort of thing? That's really governed by the governor of Wyoming, Governor Gordon's health protection orders. And I will tell you, he has not, as private citizens, he has not said that you can't leave the state. And I'm going to support that as well. There are restrictions on the other end. Where you're going, you may have to be quarantined. And his executive order on the 3rd of April definitely stipulates that when you come back into the state, you have to be quarantined for 2 weeks. So we will definitely enforce that. But as a private citizen, you're free to do those kind of things. I would just ask you to consider and use common sense and good judgment. We're trying to suppress the threat of the virus, and we're trying to make sure our vulnerable populations don't get infected. And so if you can do those kind of things in good conscience and good sense, then we're not going to limit you. But I think we all understand the intent is don't spread this thing, and let's get on top of it.
Who is considered mission essential manning, and what is the guidance on the type of face masks that can be worn while in uniform?
So mission essentiality is a term we probably haven't done much here in the Wyoming Military Department because we really determined who could come to work based on what systems they operated and if they were touching, what things were going on in their personal life. If they had a grandparent or somebody that was vulnerable in their home, we really tried to make sure that they got to stay home and stay quarantined and didn't provide a vector into their family with the virus. So if we could get people out of the office buildings wherever we were and at home and teleworking, that was the first thing. And then if we can maintain our 6 foot of social distancing within our office buildings, that's really the second thing that we tried to do. Right now, we've probably got about 2/3 of the military department teleworking, and the rest are either on an alternate work schedule or are coming to the office. And so mission essentiality didn't do it as much as a lot of other factors that I talked about. Face coverings, Department of Defense, both of the services just put guidance out on that. I will tell you, just use common sense. Face coverings are only required when you can't achieve that 6 foot of social distancing. That's probably the first thing. And then secondly, just be tasteful. Make sure that there's not any vulgar words on it, that there's not really bright colors, that it comports with your uniform, and just use common sense. Medical masks are fine, and that's great. But the important thing is only required when you can't achieve 6 foot of distance.
Sir, when is the earliest you see the majority of full-time members returning to working on site?
Yeah, I don't know yet. As I said earlier, it's all going to be tied to where I think the governor's going and his easing of restrictions. It's certainly out right now to the end of the month, and so I don't think anything will change in the next, at least 10 days or so. I think we can expect for that to continue. This is something that's it's gonna be you can start to see it in national discussions right now. It's certainly going on with the governor and his team on when to start doing this, bringing folks back. We'll keep you posted here as often as we can, because I think decisions are going to start being made in the next week about what that looks like. All right. Hey, I think that's the initial questions we had. Let me turn it over to General Nesvik and Sergeant Major Pafford to have their discussion. Thanks.
Hey, thank you, General Porter, and welcome everybody to the first virtual town hall. I do have a few things here that I wanted to broadcast to the Army, and the Sergeant Major also has a couple of things, and then we're glad to answer some questions as well. So first, I wanted to caveat a little bit onto some of the things that the tag was talking about. First, I'll tell you that right now our number one mission is being prepared to respond in the event that our state needs us to respond to any kind of a state emergency, any kind of a state response based on COVID, or there's other things, there's other threats out there in the world that are with us year to year to year, even when we haven't dealt with COVID. And so that's our mission. And when you look at this from a military perspective, what are the things? What are the priorities? What's the number one priority to ensure that we can achieve our mission? And right now, the number one priority to ensure that we're able to address this threat and the potential missions we may get from the state is to keep our force healthy. And so, that's been more of the impetus behind the policies, the guidelines, and the orders that we've put in place has been to make sure that we can maintain the health of our force so we can respond to any kind of state requests or state direction that we receive. Along those lines with keeping the force healthy, we have certain equipment that's certainly valuable in an emergency response, and we've looked hard, and I know a lot of you have been involved across the state in looking at making sure that our equipment that may be necessary in a response is ready to go. Things like ambulances and ventilators and aircraft. So that's been the focus, and I've heard from folks who've talked about, well, if you're younger and you don't have certain health conditions, isn't it better just to go ahead and get the virus and get it out of the way? And that has not been the approach. The approach has been to try to ensure that we don't exceed the capacity of our medical resources in the state. And in order to do that, we all can't get infected at the same time. And in addition to that, we have a secondary mission, and that is to keep our force healthy so that we're ready to go if we're called. The tag talked about strength, and I want to reiterate that despite the fact that we've certainly, I'll use an artillery term, we've shifted trails here over the last few weeks, we still have a priority and a mission to achieve with regards to our strength. It has a much longer term effect than almost any other thing that we do on the health of our force and on our ability to serve our state and our nation. And I'm very proud of where we're at with our strength efforts this year. As the tag indicated, 1576 today. We've got 4 more enlistments coming in today. Our goal for the end of this month is 1552. We're going to exceed that. And so, I'm still cautiously optimistic we're on the right glide path. We're actually above where we projected we would be. And I'm hopeful that we can continue on this path so that we meet or exceed 1560 by the end of September. A couple of things that we're continuing to move forward with during here over the last few weeks. We've certainly spent a lot of time on the COVID response, but one of the other things that we've identified over the past 6 to 8 months is the need to take a hard look at structure and alignment of the Army National Guard. We identified a need for some change, and we vetted that through commanders and brought commanders together here a couple of months ago and talked through different courses of action with regards to our troop command and the potential to align other units under a new brigade, basically turning troop command into a brigade headquarters with subordinate battalions. And we're at a point where we're ready to start moving that ball forward. And what the direction I gave this morning to the senior leadership team is that we need to, in a very deliberate manner, begin to be in an inclusive way to involve all those folks, basically the entire Army National Guard team, to involve them in putting together a course of action or several courses of action for consideration of what that looks like, what the timeline looks like, and how we can be most effective at implementing that change. So you're going to hear more about that. That's pretty fresh this morning. That wasn't even available when I talked with commanders yesterday afternoon. So more to follow on that, but it was hot off the press, so I thought I'd bring it up. So hey, the last thing I wanted to talk about is I don't want anybody, I've talked to the commanders and senior leaders about this across the force, but I don't want anybody to ever downplay the impact you have in your communities. When we face a threat like we face right now, it's fearful to a lot of folks, and it's hopeless to a lot of folks. And I will tell you that what we, airmen and soldiers in the state of Wyoming and across our country, bring is a sense of hope. When people see us, they see strength. When people see us, they gain confidence. When people see any person in their community that invest so much time into service beyond themselves into a greater cause, it inspires hope. And I think sometimes we forget that. We forget the impact that we have on our local communities. So don't forget that. I'm asking you as a citizen soldier to embrace that role and take pride in what you're able to do and in what you're able to, how you're able to impact your local communities. As the tag said too, I'm very proud of the way that we've all responded to this. I'm proud of the way that all of you have reacted in a professional way and in a way that's really reflective of our values. So with that, I will turn it over to the Sergeant Major, and then I think we'll both answer some questions. Go ahead, Sergeant Major.
Hey, good morning, Wyoming Military Department. First of all, I just want to say I got a couple things that I want to talk about. First, I just want to say thank you. I'm truly honored to serve as your Sergeant Major each and every day that I put this uniform on. Not only each and every day that I put this uniform on, but now in the time of crisis that we're going through. I can't thank you soldiers and families enough for what you do for this great state that we live in, but also this great country. I know there's some soldiers that are currently deployed they're going to be watching this. Again, keep your heads up. Can't thank you enough for what you do. I know you're going through some hard times right now and even some unknowns with your family. But all I can tell you to do is keep moving forward. The second thing I want to talk about is everybody knows that we hold the Best Warrior competition annually at Camp Guernsey during the April timeframe. So with everything going on, we wasn't able to do that this year, but what we was able to do was still go ahead and hold a board and look at soldiers and NCO's records, NCOERs, height, weight, APFT, education, and those things. And I really want to say congratulations so our NCO of the year this year was Staff Sergeant Joshua Berry from the Infantry Company, and our Soldier of the Year was Specialist Michael Lechner from the 67th Army Band. So again, if you see those soldiers, congratulate, hats off to both those guys. I just want to caveat to what General Nesvik said about readiness is our #1 priority. So I can tell you as the State Sergeant Major and the Command Chief Moore, I can tell you our #1 priority are soldiers and their families. We have a lot of different benefits out there for soldiers and families as we go through this tough time. Again, we can't do any mission that we're called upon if our soldiers and families are not taken care of. So I'd ask, if you're going through hard times, come up on the net and let us know, because we can't help you if you don't ask. But again, one last thing, I just can't thank you enough for what you're doing as our soldiers and airmen.
What is the status of drills and annual training? And what are the expectations for grooming standards, APFT, and ACFT?
Okay, I'll take a stab at the first part, and then I'll let the Sergeant Major talk about the second part of that question. So, first of all, I will tell you that the commanders and the senior enlisted advisors have done a good job of quickly adapting to the changes that we've all faced in training planning. And so we had to quickly look at what, with new guidelines and restrictions on social distancing and how we can muster. We had to make some decisions on April's drill, and for the most part, Army units, there's a couple small exceptions, made the decision not to drill in April. As far as May, we now have some guidelines, and commanders have begun to plan to be able to implement virtual drills if they're necessary during the month of May. The guidance I gave commanders is we will drill regardless of what restrictions are in place. We will drill in May. Hopefully, we're able to drill as close to normal as possible, in person at our armories. If we're not, I've directed the commanders to ensure that they plan a virtual drill for the month of May. We're attempting, commanders have got several options on the table right now for annual trainings that were previously planned. Right now, I'm hopeful, most of those are late part of May and into June, that we're going to be able to implement those and move in the way they've already been planned. There will be more to follow on that. We're going to have to be patient. We're going to have to be flexible. But I think the bottom line is that we are going to drill in some way, shape, or form in May. And I'll let Sergeant Major talk about the second part of that.
So for the ACFT and the APFT, currently there's a pause in doing both of them right now as we do the social distancing for COVID-19. Commanders are authorized to go back 24 months as long as the soldier has a passing record APFT score. Again, the diagnostic ACFT that we were supposed to do in 20 is paused. So once they lift that, there's been a couple policies that went out in our fragmentation orders just the past few weeks that talks about both the ACFT and APFT policy. So again, come up on the net, get with your unit if you have any questions about the ACFT or APFT. So as far as the grooming standards, the AR 670-1 still applies. So even if you're teleworking for AGRs, if you're in civilian clothes, you still have to shave. Now we've got to use some common sense with the barbers and stuff being closed. We understand that you can't just run out to the barber and get a haircut. So leaders have to use some common sense when it comes to that part of the grooming standards. But the AR 671 still does apply in and out of the uniform. And when we start back to IDT weekends, it will apply while you're in the uniform.
What is the status of currently deployed soldiers?
So right now we've got the 115th Field Artillery Brigade and one of the firing batteries that are currently in theater. Both, or basically all units that were in the CENTCOM AOR were, there was a stop movement order based on COVID-19 that was issued, and so they are affected by that order. What we know right now is that there's a potential of up to a 60-day lengthening of their tour. There is an opportunity to do an extension, or I'm sorry, an exception to policy. It doesn't appear that that exception to policy is going to be approved, and so we're planning for those units to be extended in theater for up to 60 days. I've been talking with the leadership in theater, Colonel Porter here recently, and you know they're continuing to deal with the cards they're dealt. I ask for patience. I mean, certainly nobody could have predicted the situation we're in. I think that, you know, certainly the intent behind the not allowing movement is to just continue to reduce this potential spread of this virus. So when they are done with the extension and they do come back, it's likely there will still be a quarantine period when they get back to the United States, just as our last two units that have returned had to go through basically a 2-week quarantine period at the MOB site in the States before they come home. Certainly our intent is to get those soldiers home just as quick as we possibly can. You know, the reports I receive is They're certainly disappointed. Those of us that have been deployed, realize how disappointing it can be when you kind of have a mark on the wall and you got to move it to the right. But as our soldiers typically do, they'll take anything they're dealt and deal with it in a professional way that are reflective of our Army values, and I'm very proud of them for that.
How has the COVID-19 situation affected administrative actions such as promotions, ETS, and retirement?
I will let the Sergeant Major talk about that.
So for promotions on the enlisted side, really they put in a policy that just came out again in our fragmentation orders just a couple weeks ago. So soldiers aren't able, with the stop movement, aren't able to conduct their PME, professional military education, and go to school. So what they have put in place is these soldiers can still get promoted as long as they're selected for the next higher rank. Without their PME, they can go ahead and get promoted. So again, once the stop movement is lifted, we're working through some courses of action now on getting soldiers back to school and getting them back into ATARs and things like that so we can get them back to their PME. There is going to be a time period that those soldiers that are going to get selected and promoted without their professional military education, that the policy outlines. There is some time frames in there that they have to be back into school and have it completed. So as far as retiring and ETSing, so really they kind of have two options for those soldiers that are currently deployed. The first option for retiring, they can work with our G1 in the state, do a 4187 and request an extension until they get back, or they can go up through RCENT and request to come back and try to get them home. Same thing with the soldiers that may be ETSing. If they do get extended while they're in theater, they have the same two options to work with our G1 when they come back to the state.
That was the last question for the Army, so we'll go to the air.
All right, I'll turn it over to Colonel Lyman.
Hey, good morning, Wyoming Military Department and Wyoming Air National Guard. And actually, good evening for those deployers, whether you're watching on the Army side or on the air side. It's a pleasure to be a part of this first virtual TAG Town Hall. You know, my message this morning is almost exactly like it was a month ago when this war on COVID-19 kicked off. Our first priority on the air side is protection of the force. That means we want you and your families healthy. And you've done an amazing job of that, and the TAG has reiterated that with our only one positive case, and that's phenomenal considering we've got a lot of people living in Colorado, a lot of people traveling around, and a lot of people doing our federal mission in a deployed location. So continue to keep doing those things, the CDC guidance, so that social distancing. When you can't social distance, wear your mask. Stay at home when you can, wash your hands. Don't touch your face, and hopefully I don't touch my face while I'm talking to you this morning, and use that hand sanitizer. Keep doing the great job that you're doing for you and your family, because it is working and the curve is flattening. The sword for the state of Wyoming. So we are currently in the middle of a fairly major deployment, and we're getting ready for a deployment swap out. There's been some uncertainty on that, whether we can or cannot, and some legalities. We've got people on the air side on different types of orders, but our commanders are working through it, and for those of you on the air side, you know who you are. You're getting ready to deploy, and we know you're ready, and you're going to do a great job. And I know the stress of this war at home has been, I can't even imagine. So on a normal deployment with your family, you're over there, you're doing the mission, and it's stressful because you're away from your family's at home. Now you have this additional stress of your family having to combat this COVID-19 virus. So all I can say to you is thank you so much for doing a tremendous job. Thank you to the families, our family readiness team, the whole team here at the wing, and the members deployed. You've done a phenomenal job, and we are so very proud of you, and we can't wait to get you home safely. The shield for the state of Wyoming. On the air side, I know our civil support team, you're helping with the lab testing for the COVID-19. We've got our medical people, Colonel Ogle has been plugged in. We've got some state planners, and we've done some other things. And I will just tell each and every one of you that the Wyoming Air Guard is ready to help and assist the state of Wyoming if we need to. You know, these are challenging environment. This is a challenging time and a challenging environment. And changes have had to be made. And I just want to thank the full-time staff on the teleworking. We are now in a health protection condition Charlie, and I didn't even know what that was as of about 2 months ago. 2 months ago, we had a force protection, but now we're in a health protection. We've worked through that, and our full-time staff, you've done a tremendous job making sure that the mission is continuing. And if you have to be here working, you're trying to do it just as safely as you can. Hats off to the comm team for getting, you know, I've been a drill status guardsman commander for 15 years, so I've been virtually working on the road all the time, and I know the challenges that you face. So that just took that and magnified it by about 100% with all the different people working. So comm, great job on working that. Virtual drill, when this kicked off a month ago, I sat down with Colonel Walrath and we put out a warning order, said, hey, let's think about doing this virtual drill thing and all the different things that it may come about. And really there was two reasons for that. The primary reason was for readiness because, as you know, with deployments coming up, we had to be ready and continuing the mission, and we had to be ready. But also, we, you know, more fundamental, basic airman thing is we wanted to take care of you and make sure you were getting paid. But we knew the challenges were going to be great, and the whole team was very proactive. And you just did a lion's share of work to make sure that we could do this virtual drill. The virtual drill is coming up this weekend, and I will tell you that it's not going to be perfect. So be very patient. If things aren't working, be patient with it. Sergeant Austin yesterday, and I'm going to talk about the Facebook Live stuff, he gave out some pretty good guidance there. He's our base training manager. He said, listen, move, and communicate. So with that, listen to your commanders. Your commanders are, each individual commander is responsible for your drill. So each virtual drill will look a little different. Listen to your commanders, listen to your unit training managers, and listen to your command support staff for the training that has to be done. Move, that means virtually move to the area or platform that you have to move to make sure that's done. That may be ADLS, it may be YouTube, it may be something else, but or maybe email, but move to that and then communicate. Communicate what you have done and what you have accomplished so you get credit for it. And for the commanders and chiefs out there and the training managers, a couple things. Make sure our airmen are getting credit for it, for that drill. And, you know, and at the end of the day, make sure they're getting paid for it, because that is very important. And I haven't talked with Colonel Walrath yet, but I'm sure they're doing a great job, and they'll make sure that you're all going to get paid. But that's my concern, is that you do get paid. A couple pitches on Facebook. 153rd Airlift Wing Facebook Live. If you haven't gone there, if you have a Facebook account, I encourage you to go there. That's how I get a lot of my information. Colonel Walrath and the whole team is doing a great job in our public affairs, making sure the Facebook Live, and you can go watch prior weeks as well. So go there and check it out. Check out the 153rd Airlift Wing app. So if you have a smartphone, whether it's Apple or something else, just put it in the App Store, 153rd Airlift Wing, and that app will come up. Download it. There's a lot of good things on there, but a couple of things that are pertinent right now. The COVID-19, there's information that was there this morning that they're putting stuff, CDC guidance, other guidance there. So look at that, and then also the directory. So the directory is there, so there's a lot of phone numbers there that you can get in contact with different people. Just a couple strategic things. J models, C-130Js. If you don't know, we fly C-130Hs. This J model is a new airplane. The Air Force and Air National Guard, there's basically 3 squadrons worth of J models that have not been assigned. Over the last 6 months, we've been in competition to be one of those 3 squadrons to receive these new J models. I'm happy to report that we did make the cut for the final 8. The final 8 was going to be a site survey. On the site survey, they were going to come out. Obviously, this has all changed in the last 3 weeks, and it's been pretty quiet. But all we know right now is they're doing a virtual site survey. So thank you to civil engineering and ops and maintenance for continuing to push forward with that. At the same time, we continue to be one of the national leaders in modernization. So on the modernization front, Air Mobility Command, just in the last 2 days, they approved the Rolls-Royce T-56 3.5 engine modernization on our airplanes. So this new, it's the same engine, but it basically has a whole new inside. So it's basically a brand new engine. Higher performance, better fuel efficiency, which is smarter for our nation. That's approved. Also the MP2000, so if you haven't seen it, the 8-bladed propeller. The 8-bladed propeller with the electronic valve control. It's basically a digital prop control system. That also increases performance on the airplane. We can now, that is approved as well, and the two of them together are approved. So what does that mean for our state? So as soon as our planes get returned from deployment, you will start seeing those on a permanent basis, the 8-bladed propeller, and then sometime in the future you will also see the 3.5, which will look the same, but it will be a much improved plane. So whether we do get J models or not, we are in a great position for the future for the state of Wyoming. Logistics Readiness Squadron is getting a new facility. Did I talk to change of command or not? Okay. Change of command before I go on further. So change of command from Colonel Walrath on the 153rd Airlift Wing to Colonel Dybert was scheduled for June. I made the decision and I went for approval to General Porter to delay that at least until July, and two main reasons. One, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, so I just wanted to keep the leadership team in place. I have full confidence in Colonel Dybert that he'll do a great job, but I also know that Colonel Walrath is doing a good job right now, so we just wanted that continuity of operations. The second reason is we just want to do it right. I don't even know if we're going to have a drill in June, if it's going to be virtual. I'm assuming we'll have a drill, but we wanted to make sure that when we have that change of command, it's a major event. It's a big thing for the wing. It's a big thing for the city of Wyoming and the city of Cheyenne and the state of Wyoming. And it's a big thing for individuals' families. So we want to make that a very special event. So we want to just do it right. So right now it's scheduled for July, but depending on the situation, that could get delayed till August. But right now we're anticipating July. Open house, hopefully we have it. It would be great if we could in September. We're still planning on doing that in September. The last thing I want to really talk about is strength. General Porter talked. We are up 7 individuals. That is not enough. We are 10% down. We need 130 is where we need. And our goal this year was to get about 50, about half of that, to get up to 95% manning. Recruiting, you're doing a great job. The recruiting numbers are right on target where we need to be. Where we've lacked so far is retention. So if you're thinking about getting out or you just got out and you want to get back in, come see us. And a couple pitches on the recruiting just to help with the recruiters. I'm going to throw out a number here, 307-772-6333. That's our recruiting number. So call them. If you know somebody that you want to get in, call them. Also, individuals, please, please try to share the 153rd Airlift Wing page, the Facebook Live events, because they talk recruiting all the time on those. And it just gets our message out, and it just gets to people to see what great work we're doing. And there's also a 153rd Airlift Wing recruiting website. My final thing before I turn it over to the chief is I just want to say we're so very proud of you. We care about you and your families, and I know these are trying times. So if you're hurting and you're struggling, please contact your first shirt, your chief, your commander. You can contact the Wing Commander hotline if you needed to. You can contact the TAG hotline. We care about you. We want to make sure you're okay, and we're all going to get through this together. So if you need help, we're here to help you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Moore.
Thank you, sir. So really, let me echo what you've heard 4 times already. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for all the hard work. I'm amazed by the things I see and hear every day, of the problems I get taken care of at the lowest level. So let me repeat the thank you. Appreciate what you guys do. So let me just remind some folks, especially our NCOs out there, remember our fundamentals. Remember what we're supposed to be doing. Even though maybe communication has changed in how we do it, the fundamentals are still there. Still required to check on our folks, make sure everything's going okay. And the biggest thing I want to remind folks of is remember to check on our members' families. This could be a trying time right now for family members. People are struggling. It may even go beyond immediate family. There might be some other family concerns that need to be addressed. And we have a lot of ways to help folks out. So make sure you're speaking up if you're having an issue, and if you're a supervisor or you're leading a team, make sure you're asking folks how they're doing and how their families are doing. I will tell you that your chiefs and your first sergeants have been talking a lot. We've been trying to get after our communication and make sure that we're getting the information out that matters. I will tell you there's a lot of issues and concerns out there, and a lot of those have to be treated a case-by-case basis. So what may work in one situation might not work in another. So keep that in mind. If things don't make sense, please communicate with us and let us know. So I'll just leave you with this last thought and something I've heard a couple times lately, and I've said this in a couple different forms, but especially as leaders, leverage your influence for the benefit of others. If you're doing that, then you're probably doing the right thing. So again, thank you, and I think we're ready for some questions.
First question is two-part. What's happening in regards to flight operations, and how are you maintaining social distancing while still conducting mission readiness?
Okay, I think I'll answer that question. So we talked about readiness, and we need to be ready, and we are deployed. And I will tell you, as a aviator, that flying is a perishable skill like a lot of other things. So if you don't do it, you lose that skill. And if you lose that skill, you don't have that capability and you don't have that readiness. So we are flying. So if you are around the city of Cheyenne, you will notice that our C-130s are out there flying. So, and this is a challenging, tough question, right? So how do you maintain social distancing when you're working on that airplane and you're up in tight confines? Now, I will say that when you can, we're using masks and we're covering and we're trying to be as safe as we can and using all of those things. But safety in mind, I know Colonel Dybert has put out guidance that when they can, maintainers and ops are wearing masks, and in some cases they just can't. So, and those are one of those things where that's the risk that we have to accept, but people have to be trained, and the mission still must go on. Now, I know on the civilian side, the Federal Aviation Administration, they're looking at waivers and extending check rides and landing currency and a lot of those other things, so they're willing to accept more risk on operations of airplanes. And I know in the military as well, that they are looking at that, and Colonel Shadd has been talking a lot about that, so those are some other considerations as well. What was the second part of your question?
Maintaining social distancing
Okay.
while also conducting mission readiness.
And I think I covered that.
Next question. For service members who want to serve their AT or ST days, are they able to?
You want to cover that?
So like I said earlier, this is a situation that the commanders on the ground have to decide. ST and AT days are going to be available like they always have been. And depending on the situation and what's going on, your commander, along with other leadership, is going to have to decide if it's the right time to do AT and ST. But absolutely, the people that they decide will need to do AT and ST will have them available.
And I'll just add to that really quick. And I know Colonel Walrath has put out to the group commanders and the squadron commanders that if somebody would like to do AT or ST, and there's things to do, I think there's some flexibility there. You know, some people want to continue their training and help maybe get a paycheck as well. So they are doing things that they can do, and there's some flexibility. So work with your commanders, work with your chiefs, and they are the ones that will know, and will try to be able to help you out.
Hey, thanks everybody for the briefings and telling everybody in informative what's up. I think we've got time for a couple of questions that came up while we were doing some speaking here. So if we could go there.
What is the best way a guardsman can help their community?
Best way a guardsman. That's a tough one right now because obviously our guardsmen are so powerful when they're out interacting with the community and influencing them, like Chief Moore said. I guess if I had to say, it's the leading by example. piece of that. You gotta stay home. If you do go out, you gotta wear your mask. You gotta do those things. You gotta be the common sense example to the community. I'll give the other folks an opportunity to talk about that well. And I know that's tough to do because that's, we are people of action and we want to influence how things are going on. This is a different challenge for us. And so I think it's all about how we set the example, how we provide that calming influence to the community, and that understanding that we're going to be there if they need us. Anybody else got anything to add to that one?
Yeah, I might add one thing, sir. So we have had some guardsmen that have had the opportunity to assist their communities where there's been a need to provide delivery services. They've done this in a volunteer capacity, not in a state active duty or any kind of a status, but just as a volunteer. And I certainly encourage our soldiers to do those kind of things with the caveat that the number one priority remains you have to be doing everything that, following all the guidelines to make sure that you stay healthy for when you are needed for a real state mission. And so, I think there's things like that when your community needs, has volunteer efforts going on. If you can do that in a safe way and adhere to the social distancing guidelines, I think those are great ways to get out and help your community. And I think messaging, just the fact that you're ready and that you are leading by example by showing them what right looks like. I think those are all things that are subtle, but they're helpful and they inspire hope.
And I'll just add one thing. With those, also, you are the example, so don't propagate rumors and try to be as knowledgeable as you can to what's going on. People are worried and they're concerned and they're afraid. I heard a lot about the martial law or other things are going to happen and the military is going to take over. So I know Public Affairs has a great website for rumor control. So for all our airmen and soldiers out there, hey, just try to be as knowledgeable as you can. And if you don't know the answer, say I don't know. But that's not us. We're always here in support of civilian operations. We're here to help. We're not here to take over the population.
A question for Colonel Lyman. What is the timeline for J model issue to H model units? How does the 153rd Airlift Wing MAFS mission weigh in the J model issue decision?
So that's like a multi-part question. I'll try to not take up too much time, but on the initial scoring sheet that came out, the MAFS mission wasn't even a consideration. We think it should have been because of there's a lot of different reasons that it should have been, and our congressional delegation was highly involved and plugged in to try to change that formula, as well as our governor and our TAG. So they did a great job of trying to change that equation. Basically, the J model for a safety factor and for standardization of different MAFS units. California has J model, so it would have just made sense for Wyoming and for Reno to have J models as well. So we think it's a consideration, but it hasn't really been part of the official equation and formula. The timeline on it, I know there's a decision, we believe that it would happen this summer, and they're already looking at training dates, but it would depend on what unit would get it first, which one would rank out first. I wouldn't, this is just, I don't even want to say a timeline. It would be 2 to 4 years probably at least at a minimum before we would even start to see them on the ramp if we did compete and we were able to procure J models. So it's a ways down the road, but it's not too far. So in the next 4 to 5 years, we would probably definitely see that.
A question for Major General Porter. While teleworking is presenting challenges, changes to accommodate the crisis have made some work more productive than ever. Will directorates / the Adjutant General hold an AAR after we return to the office? And how do you foresee these changes affecting the way we do business in the future?
Thanks. We've already held one after action review just to go after the things that maybe we could improve on, at the start of this thing, and we'll certainly have a couple of more. I think it will cause us to take a look at it and maybe change the way we do our business as we sort of peel this back and saw what was really effective and maybe what wasn't so good. It's interesting because I think we're going to go through at least an iteration of this again, some level of this again, until we get a vaccine, until that becomes, everybody becomes, basically like we do the flu every year. We're gonna have to deal with this going forward. It's going to be, I think, a year or so before that happens. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for us to adjust. I'll tell you one thing that jumped out at me though, that in this thing, I do this job, and most of us do this job because of the mission that we have and the people that we serve with. This just made it, come in crystal clear about how important the people are in this business and how much I enjoy working with them. I miss my teammates. I miss seeing Jamie. I miss seeing Major Moon. I miss seeing Chief Moore. I miss seeing Colonel Walrath and Chris Smith, and I don't miss seeing General Nesvik. But I miss a lot of other things about that, and it's the people that really provide the energy. I mean, it's not, just like what you folks are going through in teleworking. It's not as fun, I don't think, to be there and doing it by yourself in isolation. It is much better. It is much more fulfilling when we do this as a team. And I miss going out and seeing soldiers, and I miss seeing airmen, and it just, once again, just reinforced to me how important it is our people are and how much I enjoy working with them and performing the missions that we do. So back to where you are, I think it's got potential to change. We're not gonna close our door on anything, but I'll tell you, I sure miss serving with folks. Folks, anything else you want to add to that? All right. Anything else? Okay, I think that's it. We're coming up on an hour now. That's a lot enough time for you guys to be listening to us. I really appreciate General Nesvik and Colonel Lyman being here today. They've got their jobs on the civilian side that are certainly demanding, and I appreciate both of you being here today. They get to, our two SCLs are have to do this all the time, so they're stuck with doing it. But I appreciate you folks showing up here today. I think just to close, it's been about 3 weeks now we've been going through this. That's a long time. The grind's starting to set in, and tempers are starting to flare a little bit. Things are starting to grind, and now's the time for our discipline as military members and members of the military department to kick in, because I think we've got at least another 7 to 10 days of this kind of action before we start seeing decisions that could lead to easing of restrictions, and that's going to be tough. So all of you continue to stay safe, continue to be diligent in what you've been doing, and again, appreciate very much everything that you do for our state and nation. Right for the brand, folks. Cool.